So we've talked about succession and transition and had some good examples of within the family working, but it's always useful to think about what are the alternatives. So let's say we've got a company, it's thriving, it's doing fairly well, and we have to confront this question: do we look for a transition within the family or some other solution? And I just thought some of you might have a few thoughts about an ESOP, a sale to existing employees of some kind or another, a sale to an outsider, other kinds of transactions, and how they are good or bad for the family in this case. Thoughts? Sure.
I'd be happy to, because as I mentioned, I started getting involved with private equity firms looking at family businesses and helping them evaluate, whether they should buy them and what needed to be done. And you get to see a lot of the family dynamics, and some were very smooth, where the family agreed that no one wanted to really run it. I was involved, I can talk with somebody who knows York wall coverings, where my client purchased them. It was a large family business, and they had a daughter in the business who would have liked to have run it, but they went through a very objective process and said it was created more value for the family to sell it outside. They retained an interest in it, and she retained a major job. And that worked out well. Some families are, it doesn't work out well. Some are resentful, some try to stay in the business for a while and work out a deal with the equity firms. That quite often, or usually, doesn't go well there. But it also works well when it could be half in, half out, where you can bring in an outside investor, where the family can take some of their value off the table there, but continue to be involved in the business there. And I won't go into it, but I was on the board of Mott Corporation in Farmington for 5 years, was an ESOP, which is very complex, but it could be right for the right families. But I probably need an attorney like Coleman to explain where it fits right.
Your thoughts, Coleman?
Well, I think that the toughest situation is when the leadership honestly comes to the conclusion that there's nobody in the next generation that can run the business, okay? And that's a very, very tough situation, because it's not totally objective, all right? It's a big difference if you're at a public corporation and you look at a person and they're not satisfying the objectives of their responsibility, and you say, Friday's the last day. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not emotional, okay, in the sense of when you're talking about, you're looking at an offspring and offsprings, and you have to come to what's best for the family. And if we're going to maximize our major asset, this is what we have to do at this time. And then we have to prepare, or we're going to go to the outside and we're going to get a professional CEO to run our business. And I find that there's a lot more emotional and psychological problems in doing this than the actual legal or the mechanics of doing it. Drawing up a plan that is not discussed with the family and how it's going to be and if it's going to work is really, in most situations, a real design for failure. Because anybody can draw up a plan, and you know that you go to the computer and you draw up a financial plan, you press a couple of buttons and they change the numbers around, but is there any reality to it, okay? And that happens sometimes with a plan that a family sets up, and this is the way it's going to be. Well, that way doesn't work many times. So I go back to the same basic concept of openness, honest discussions, the strengths and the weaknesses of the various people, and what is our objective.
Doug?
Yeah, I have found when you get in those difficult situations, it's hard to, the companies that get through them with the least turmoil are ones that either have a formal board of outside advisors with independent directors or trusted advisors that understand the business and understand the dynamic, that you can really have someone that doesn't have an emotional and a family or an equity investment in the firm. And I've seen the families tend to listen to them if they're smart and say, okay, I need to step away from the family or have someone that can really show me how it looks from the outside. So I would advise that any firm, whether it's a small, informal, group of outside advisors, it doesn't have to be costly or anything like that, but that stay involved and that you can bounce ideas off of.
I'd like to echo what you just said, if I may.
Please.
Like Megan, we also utilized the Family Business Program when we first started this transition. And my father had a support group, and my brother and I had a support group. And so he was with the first generation, or the seniors, and we were with the second generation, or the children who were receiving the ownership in the company. And not only were the advisors who were working with UConn Family Business Program, but also the peers were invaluable to us in helping us work through the process. So I echo what you say. It's a good idea.
I was intrigued by the comment, Ms. West, you had about your family meeting. First of all, your father sounds wonderful. And in the family meeting, what do you do with looking for ways to kind of draw information out? If a parent is a control freak, and there are topics they don't want to talk about. So they'll talk about revenue, talk about kind of the business, but will not talk about their health. And you kind of know, you've grown up with them all your life, but you kind of know something's going on, but that generation just didn't talk about that with their children. Strategies for kind of helping in those, when you're in a family meeting?
Well, I would say in that situation, maybe getting agenda items ahead of time, letting people know what the expectations are of what they're going to be talking about. And the other thing is maybe everybody needs to talk about their health. So it's not you're singling out one person and expecting that answer from them, but saying, okay, we want an update from everybody, and that might make things a little bit more comfortable or easy for them to share.
So Simsbury Bank's purpose in collaborating with UConn and the Family Business Program is to create more knowledge and more access to information that's useful to family businesses, useful to our economy, and frankly, useful to Simsbury Bank. Many of our folks are here today, and this is another opportunity for them to learn about family businesses, and we are trying to and continue to try to build our knowledge in family businesses because we'd like to be the bank for family businesses in Connecticut, and this has been a great way for us to do it, partnering with UConn and UConn's Family Business Program. One of the other things that we're doing, Simsbury Bank is doing now to add to knowledge and conversation in the state is focusing on manufacturing. Manufacturing is really a growth driver of Connecticut's economy today. And we launched several months ago a podcast series called Manufacturing Matters. And although the focus is on manufacturing, many of our guests have been family business owners or advisors to family business owners. So inevitably in the podcast, you'll get also insights into family businesses and manufacturing. If you go to your podcast app and type in Manufacturing Matters, we will pop up there somewhere in there, and you can, I'd encourage you to check those out.